Most people begin their mornings in a rush, grabbing whatever food is convenient or looks appealing, without realizing how profoundly their breakfast choices affect their brain's ability to function. The idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day is often repeated, but few understand that not all breakfasts are created equal. The truth is, many common breakfast foods that dominate our tables are actually harming our mental performance rather than helping it. When we fill our mornings with sugary cereals, white bread toasts, muffins, donuts, pancakes covered in syrup, or flavored yogurts, we might feel satisfied for a moment, but what we are really doing is feeding our brain the wrong kind of fuel. These foods are loaded with sugar and refined carbohydrates that provide a quick burst of energy, but fail to sustain focus or clarity throughout the day. The problem lies in how these foods interact with our body's chemistry. When we consume high sugar and refined carb breakfasts, our blood glucose levels shoot up rapidly. This quick spike can make us feel alert, energetic, or even slightly euphoric for a short period. However, the body responds by releasing insulin, a hormone that helps bring blood sugar back down to a normal range. Unfortunately, this process often happens too quickly, resulting in a sharp drop in glucose levels. That sudden crash leaves the brain underfueled and struggling to stay alert, leading to symptoms like fatigue, irritability, and poor concentration just a few hours after eating. This constant rise and fall of blood sugar levels throughout the day can make it difficult to maintain steady mental performance. The human brain is one of the most energy-demanding organs in the body, using up to 20% of our daily energy intake. It depends on a consistent supply of glucose to function properly, but that energy must come in a stable, controlled manner. When we flood it with sugar early in the morning, we create chaos in its energy supply. Over time, this pattern of starting the day with sugary foods can make the brain less sensitive to insulin, a condition linked to memory problems, poor decision-making, and even a higher risk of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. The more frequently we rely on sugary breakfasts, the more we train our brain to depend on constant glucose spikes, which eventually dulls its ability to regulate energy efficiently. Another hidden danger of such breakfasts is how they affect mood and motivation. The sugar rush can give a temporary feeling of happiness and energy, but when the inevitable crash follows, it brings feelings of sluggishness, stress, and anxiety. People who start their day with processed, sugary foods often find themselves craving more sugar by mid-morning, leading to a vicious cycle of snacking and poor choices that further drain mental clarity. This is why by late morning, many people struggle to stay focused at work or school, even though they ate what they thought was a good breakfast. What makes the situation worse is that sugary breakfast options are heavily marketed as healthy. Boxes of cereal are covered with labels that promise vitamins, minerals, and energy, but they often hide the reality that they contain more sugar than a dessert. Even seemingly innocent options like flavored yogurts or granola bars are often packed with hidden sugars that contribute to the same problem. The body may feel full for a short while, but the brain remains undernourished. Choosing these foods every morning slowly conditions the body and brain to operate on unstable energy, which over time affects not only focus and productivity, but also emotional balance. People may find themselves more irritable, anxious, or mentally foggy without understanding that the problem began with their first meal of the day. A breakfast full of sugar and refined carbs may taste comforting and convenient, but it silently sabotages the brain's capacity to think clearly, stay calm, and perform at its best throughout the day. When a person starts their morning with sugary cereals, white bread, pastries, or sweetened drinks, the body immediately experiences a rapid rise in blood sugar levels. This happens because these foods are made of refined carbohydrates that quickly convert into glucose once digested. The brain, which depends on glucose for energy, gets an initial surge of fuel, leading to a short period of alertness or even mild euphoria. However, this energy is deceptive because it is unstable and short-lived. Within a short span of time, the body responds by releasing a large amount of insulin to control the excess sugar circulating in the bloodstream. As insulin drives glucose into the cells, blood sugar levels drop suddenly, creating what is known as a sugar crash. This abrupt decline leaves the brain with an inconsistent energy supply, resulting in fatigue, mental fog, and poor concentration. The human brain functions best when it receives a steady flow of glucose. It does not store energy like muscles do, so it relies on consistent fuel from the bloodstream. When breakfast causes a quick sugar spike followed by a crash, the brain experiences a kind of energy roller coaster. This unstable pattern disrupts neurotransmitter balance, affects memory, and reduces focus. People often describe feeling sluggish, irritable, or unable to think clearly after such meals. The body, in response, sends hunger signals, urging another intake of sugar or caffeine to restore energy levels, which restarts the unhealthy cycle. Over time, this pattern leads to dependency on frequent snacking and leaves the brain constantly fluctuating between hyperactivity and exhaustion. This unstable glucose pattern has more serious long-term consequences than just temporary tiredness. Frequent sugar spikes and crashes can make the brain more resistant to insulin. When brain cells become insulin resistant, they cannot absorb glucose efficiently, starving neurons of the energy they need to perform vital functions. This metabolic dysfunction has been linked to cognitive decline, poor decision-making, and a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. The constant sugar highs and lows can also affect mood by interfering with the brain's ability to produce serotonin and dopamine, the chemicals responsible for happiness, motivation, and emotional stability. As a result, individuals who regularly consume high-sugar breakfasts often experience mood swings, irritability, or even symptoms of depression. The effects are not only mental but physical as well. The constant rise and fall of blood sugar levels affect the body's stress hormones, particularly cortisol. After a sugar crash, cortisol levels rise to restore glucose levels, leading to feelings of anxiety, tension, and restlessness. This stress response can also elevate heart rate and blood pressure, adding strain on the body early in the day. It becomes clear that what people assume is a harmless, sweet breakfast actually triggers a cascade of biological stress reactions that wear down both the body and the mind over time. Another problem is that these kinds of breakfasts trick the brain into craving more sugar throughout the day. The pleasure centers in the brain respond strongly to the quick dopamine release that sugar provides, reinforcing the desire to repeat the experience. But because the satisfaction is temporary, the brain quickly asks for more, making it difficult to resist sugary snacks or drinks later in the morning. This constant craving loop not only affects dietary habits, but also distracts from work or study, reducing productivity and mental efficiency. By mid-morning, the combined effects of the sugar crash become evident. Many people find themselves reaching for another coffee, an energy drink, or a pastry just to stay awake. Instead of providing steady energy, these habits create cycles of highs and lows that exhaust the brain. The constant fluctuation prevents deep concentration, weakens memory, and increases irritability. A person might start the day feeling energetic and optimistic, but end up tired and unfocused before noon, unaware that their breakfast choices are to blame. A breakfast that causes sharp sugar fluctuations is like starting the day on unstable ground. The body may initially feel fueled, but the brain pays the price soon after. Sustained mental clarity, focus, and calmness depend on stable blood sugar levels, which can never be achieved with a sugary or refined carb breakfast. Each spike and crash drains cognitive energy, leaving behind fatigue, frustration, and loss of control over cravings, turning what should be the day's most empowering meal into its most damaging one when people begin their day with refined or processed breakfast. They often fail to realize that their meal is missing some of the most essential nutrients the brain depends on. Foods such as sugary cereals, pastries, white bread, and sweetened yogurts may fill the stomach, but they provide almost no lasting nourishment for mental performance. These meals are usually stripped of proteins, healthy fats, and fiber, which are the building blocks that keep the brain sharp, balanced, and productive. Without these nutrients, the brain cannot efficiently produce neurotransmitters, maintain steady energy, or regulate mood, which leads to poor focus, forgetfulness, and emotional instability. Protein is one of the most crucial components missing from refined breakfasts. It provides amino acids, which are the raw materials for neurotransmitters such as dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine. Dopamine supports motivation and alertness. Serotonin stabilizes mood, and acetylcholine enhances memory and learning. When breakfast lacks protein, the brain struggles to synthesize these chemicals efficiently, resulting in low motivation, mood swings, and reduced mental clarity. For example, eating a sugary muffin instead of an egg-based meal might give a short burst of energy, but it fails to sustain concentration because the brain is not receiving the amino acids it needs to maintain chemical balance. Over time, consistently skipping protein in the morning can make it harder to stay focused and emotionally steady throughout the day. Healthy fats are another essential element missing from many modern breakfasts. The brain is made up of nearly 60% fat, and it relies on omega-3 fatty acids and other healthy fats to maintain the structure of its cells and support communication between neurons. When people avoid healthy fats in favor of low-fat or processed foods, their brain cells become less flexible and signal transmission slows down. This can lead to slower thinking, difficulty recalling information, and reduced creativity. Foods such as avocados, nuts, seeds, olive oil, and eggs provide the type of fats that strengthen brain membranes and improve cognitive function. Without them, the brain lacks the stability and resilience needed to perform well under stress or mental pressure. Fiber also plays a critical role in brain health, yet it is almost completely absent from refined breakfast foods. Fiber slows down digestion and helps release glucose gradually into the bloodstream, ensuring a steady supply of energy to the brain. When breakfast is made up of refined carbohydrates that lack fiber, glucose floods the bloodstream quickly and then drops sharply, creating cycles of fatigue and poor concentration. A fiber-rich breakfast, such as oatmeal with nuts or whole grain toast with avocado, keeps energy stable, preventing the brain from experiencing sudden highs and lows in alertness. The gut-brain connection is also influenced by fiber, since it supports healthy gut bacteria that produce important compounds affecting mood and cognitive function. A lack of fiber can therefore weaken both physical digestion and mental clarity. Processed breakfasts also deprive the body of essential vitamins and minerals like magnesium, zinc, iron, and B vitamins, which are all key for cognitive performance. Iron supports oxygen flow to the brain. Magnesium helps regulate nerve function. B vitamins convert food into usable brain energy. When breakfast consists of empty calories, the brain runs on limited reserves and gradually loses its efficiency. This is why people who start their day with balanced meals tend to report feeling more focused, calm, and capable of handling stress, while those who rely on sugary or refined foods often feel distracted, anxious, or mentally tired even before midday. A breakfast without protein, healthy fats, and fiber may seem harmless, but it silently drains the brain of what it needs to function at its best. The absence of these key nutrients affects memory, learning, and emotional stability far more than people realize. Each morning meal is an opportunity to replenish and strengthen the mind. When that opportunity is filled with processed, nutrient-poor foods, the brain operates below its potential, unable to perform the way it was designed to. Consistently consuming high-sugar breakfasts has more than caused temporary fatigue or poor concentration. Over time, it can lead to serious and lasting harm to the brain. When people begin each day with refined carbohydrates and sugary foods, they set off a pattern of biochemical reactions that gradually wear down cognitive function and emotional stability. This routine not only affects daily focus, but also increases the long-term risk of memory loss, cognitive decline, and mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. The brain, being a highly sensitive organ that depends on steady nourishment, suffers when it is constantly exposed to unstable blood sugar levels and inflammation triggered by poor dietary habits. One of the most damaging effects of frequent high-sugar breakfasts is the strain they place on insulin regulation. The brain needs glucose for energy, but when blood sugar levels spike repeatedly, insulin sensitivity begins to weaken. Over time, brain cells become less responsive to insulin, which prevents them from absorbing enough glucose to function properly. This condition, known as insulin resistance, deprives neurons of fuel and disrupts communication between them. Studies have shown that insulin resistance in the brain is directly linked to memory problems, slower information processing, and a higher likelihood of developing Alzheimer's disease, sometimes referred to as the type 3 diabetes, because of its connection to glucose metabolism issues. Another major consequence of sugary breakfasts is chronic inflammation. Foods high in refined sugar and processed carbohydrates trigger the release of inflammatory molecules that can damage brain tissue and impair neural connections. This inflammation can interfere with the brain's ability to form and maintain synapses, which are essential for learning and memory. In the early stages, this might appear as mild forgetfulness or mental fog, but over years, the damage can accumulate and lead to serious neurodegenerative conditions. In addition, inflammation affects neurotransmitter production, which influences mood and emotional balance. A diet that consistently promotes inflammation can therefore contribute to feelings of sadness, anxiety, and irritability, even in people who do not have an underlying psychological disorder. High-sugar diets also alter the brain's reward system. When sugar enters the body, it triggers a release of dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for pleasure and motivation. These fats also help protect the brain from oxidative stress, a damaging process that can weaken cognitive performance over time. Research indicates that people who consume adequate healthy fats in their diet are more likely to experience better mood stability and slower cognitive decline as they age. By including these fats in breakfast, the brain receives the foundational nutrients it needs to stay resilient and adaptable throughout the day. Fiber found in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains also plays an essential role in sustaining mental energy. It slows digestion, which allows for a gradual release of glucose into the bloodstream, ensuring the brain has a consistent supply of fuel. This steady energy prevents the sudden crashes that occur after consuming sugary breakfasts, helping to maintain concentration and mental endurance. Moreover, fiber supports gut health, and since the gut and brain communicate through the gut-brain axis, a healthy digestive system can improve mood and cognitive clarity. People who eat fiber-rich breakfasts often report feeling fuller for longer, which also reduces unnecessary snacking and helps stabilize energy throughout the morning. Multiple studies have shown measurable cognitive benefits from balanced breakfast. Students who eat high-protein or high-fiber breakfasts perform better on memory, attention, and reasoning tests compared to those who consume sugary cereals or pastries. Adults who follow similar eating patterns show improved productivity, faster reaction times, and better emotional regulation at work. This improvement occurs because a balanced meal provides the brain with steady, high-quality energy rather than the volatile rush that processed foods deliver. When energy levels are stable, the brain can devote more resources to problem-solving, creativity, and long-term memory formation. In addition to mental performance, balanced breakfasts also enhance mood and stress management. Stable blood sugar levels prevent the irritability, restlessness, and anxiety that often accompany sugar crashes. Nutrients from whole foods help regulate cortisol, the stress hormone, allowing people to feel calmer and more emotionally balanced throughout the day. The difference between a balanced breakfast and a sugary one becomes evident in how people think, feel, and perform. One supports consistent energy, mental clarity, and emotional stability. The other leads to fatigue, distraction, and cravings. The research makes it clear that the brain thrives on nourishment that is steady and complete. and the first meal of the day sets that standard. Starting with protein, healthy fats, and fiber gives the mind the strength and stability it needs to function at its peak from morning to night. The first meal of the day does more than satisfy hunger. It establishes the rhythm for how the brain and body will function for the rest of the day. A healthy breakfast sets the tone for mental clarity, focus, and emotional balance, while a poor breakfast filled with sugar and processed carbohydrates can lead to fatigue, distraction, and mood swings. The foods chosen in the morning influence not only immediate energy levels, but also the brain's long-term performance and resilience. Choosing nutrient-dense foods such as eggs, oatmeal, nuts, seeds, fruits, and whole grains provides the brain with a stable and lasting source of fuel, allowing it to perform at its highest potential. When the brain receives balanced nutrition at the start of the day, it benefits from steady glucose levels that support concentration and alertness. Unlike sugary breakfasts that cause a rapid spike and crash in blood sugar, balanced meals release energy slowly and consistently. This steady fuel supply helps neurons fire efficiently and supports neurotransmitter balance, which directly affects focus, decision-making, and emotional regulation. A breakfast rich in protein and healthy fats helps sustain mental energy without the jittery highs or sluggish lows that come from consuming refined carbohydrates. People who eat balanced breakfasts tend to experience improved attention spans, faster reaction times, and more stable moods compared to those who rely on sugary or processed foods. In addition to maintaining focus, a healthy breakfast plays a major role in stabilizing mood and stress levels. The brain relies on nutrients such as amino acids, B vitamins, and omega-3 fatty acids to produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which influence happiness, motivation, and calmness. When breakfast includes sources of these nutrients, such as eggs, nuts, and whole grains, supports a balanced emotional state and reduces the likelihood of irritability or anxiety later in the day. Conversely, skipping breakfast or choosing high-sugar foods can lead to drops in serotonin levels, leaving people more prone to frustration, anxiety, and cravings. A morning meal that nourishes both body and brain creates a foundation for emotional stability and positive mood throughout the day. A healthy breakfast also enhances memory and learning by supporting communication between brain cells. Whole foods such as oats, fruits, and seeds contain antioxidants and micronutrients that protect neurons from oxidative stress and inflammation. This protection helps maintain cognitive function, ensuring that memory and learning abilities remain sharp. For students, professionals, and anyone engaged in mentally demanding tasks, a nutritious breakfast provides the cognitive edge needed for efficiency and creativity. It allows the brain to retain information more effectively and sustain attention for longer periods, turning the early hours into a time of productivity rather than fatigue. Another key benefit of a balanced breakfast is its role in regulating appetite and metabolism. When the morning meal contains adequate protein and fiber, it keeps people feeling full longer and prevents mid-morning hunger crashes that often lead to unhealthy snacking. This stable energy pattern not only improves brain performance, but also supports long-term health by reducing the risk of obesity and insulin resistance. The sense of fullness and satisfaction from a nutritious breakfast helps people make better food choices throughout the day, contributing to both physical and mental well-being. The foods eaten in the morning also communicate powerful signals to the brain about how to use energy. Processed breakfasts filled with sugar and refined grains tell the body to expect quick bursts of energy followed by exhaustion, while whole, nutrient-rich meals train the body to maintain endurance and focus. Over time, consistently choosing the right breakfast reinforces positive biological rhythms, allowing the brain to function efficiently without constant cravings or energy crashes. This creates a self-sustaining cycle of good nutrition, stable mood, and high cognitive performance. Ultimately, the quality of breakfast determines how the brain operates through every challenge of the day. By choosing real nutrient-dense foods instead of quick processed options, people can transform their mornings into a period of strength, clarity, and balance. A healthy breakfast is not simply a meal. It is an investment in mental power, emotional stability, and long-term brain health that shapes how effectively a person thinks, feels, and performs each day.